brain activity is depressed. Having a depressed brain makes our body feel a way that someone would describe what depression is. Depression is, I can't focus. It's like a muscle, right? Your brain's a muscle. And instead of doing 100 burpees and going in fifth gear, you're stuck in second gear and you can barely do a few sit-ups, and push-ups are hard, you know? So the MTHFR story absolutely intersects our brain function because researchers began to notice that people with depression, this is really like big, like 30,000 foot view studies looking at lots of people over time. The presence of the MTHFR gene, having two copies, made it a lot more likely that that group of people would be treated for and complain about depression.
The following information is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to diagnose, treat, prevent, cure, or prescribe for any medical or psychological conditions. Seek out the opinion of a qualified healthcare professional if you need medical attention. The guests of this show provide their own opinions and may not represent the values or beliefs of Living Waters Wellness Center or Whole Body Detox Show. And welcome everyone to today's Whole Body Detox Show. I'm David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center. Living Waters Wellness Center was formed after we discovered how to heal my body from multiple symptoms, including allergies, asthma, chronic fatigue, back pain, psoriasis, acne, hives, yeast infections, and finally, cancer, and I did it all naturally. After 20 years of trying numerous different treatments, medical treatments, cleanses, iridology, muscle therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, homeopathy, naturopathy, those experiences led us to discover that recipe that led to become known as the 4 Natural Laws of Healing. Combining multiple natural healing modalities to fully detox and cleanse the body and allowing the body to take the perfect nutrition to fully restore the body back to its innate health. This became known as a 10-day healing retreat. We've helped thousands of people just like you get their health restored so they can live their life to the fullest. And if you want to learn how you can get your body back to living your best life, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on that link, 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. Good morning, everyone. David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center, where miracles begin by healing from within. Today, I've got a special guest on, Dr. Andrew Rostenberg, who I met several years ago. And the first thing I noted about Dr. Rostenberg was this guy's a little different person. He's just not a chiropractor. In fact, I would say he has some pretty unique tools in his toolbox. And what I noticed was his unique skills when it comes to muscle testing. Well, then he wrote a book several years ago, a book I read while on a raft trip down the Salmon River. I found it fascinating. The book took on a bit of water, but I love the information. The book is called Your Body Genius. And we have a lot of mutual clients that we work on together. And so I thought, it'd be fun to bring Dr. Andrew on because he's got some unique knowledge and perspective about the MTHFR and gluten and the gut. And so we're going to get into that all today. Dr. Rostenberg, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, David. Nice. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So a little bit about you. Give me a little bit of synopsis. You're a chiropractor, but you're more than that.
Yeah, I'm just the kind of kid that, when I was growing up, I begged my parents for like Reebok pumps when they came out. I thought they were the coolest shoes I've ever seen, and I begged them for the shoes. And they finally, just to get me to shut up, they got me the shoes. And then I took a mechanical pencil in my class and took the shoes apart because I was just obsessed with how they worked. So that's just my brain. I like to know how things work. And I also am frustrated with everybody at our state of, poor health and all these problems that we seem to be unable to solve as a society. So chiropractic was a natural fit for me. The philosophy is incredible. Bodies heal themselves and you take pressure off the nervous system, and the communication between your brain and your body back and forth increases, and you experience health and wellness from that. But I was led, let's say, down another parallel and related path to look at the body as holistically as possible. And so I try to, I'm trained to incorporate nutrition, environmental toxins, like things like you talk about, EMF and the electromagnetics. That's a form of stress that we experience. So just trying to appreciate the body for how it's designed to operate, and then the kind of environment that the body's in, like architecturally the structure, but also the chemistry. And then that gets into the chemical reactions that our nutrients cause. And that's what led me into methylation. So, just that nagging kid in class who's always asking why. It does get annoying. I'm not going to lie,
The curious cat. Well, unlike me, I had to learn things because I was sick and I was just trying to figure out, well, why am I sick and how do I get well? And one thing less. Like I tell people, no one grows up to become a colon hydrotherapist.
That is not on the career, counselor's, algorithm chart that they hand out in high school, probably.
Even when I kind of got pushed into it, it still wasn't on my wish list. But
But I think that's a good point, David, that, there's the idea of the journey of the wounded healer. So, I mean, I grew up in a challenging environment with substandard health for a long time. And, you just suffer as kids and teenagers, young adults. You don't really understand what's wrong, like migraines and stuff. I mean, I remember the first time I had one, I will never forget that moment in time. And I started to see my vision change. And it took me like 15 years to figure out that's what an aura is called. And so like most of the stuff I help patients with, to be honest with you, I've experienced it to some degree. So everybody's had gut problems, everybody's had acid reflux, everybody's had pain in their stomach. Most people on earth have had headaches. Most people on earth have had a bad night of sleep or a bout of anxiety. So like it'd be difficult to solve problems for patients if the individual provider of care couldn't relate it all to what people are going through. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have that laugh when I have people come in, they walk in and they start telling me their symptoms. And I kind of take a little look up at the sky and go, oh, this is why I suffered through that. Mm-hmm. So I had the empathy and the knowledge to understand that. Because, I was going to be a realtor my whole life. I was going to buy and build big buildings and warehouses. That was my path, I thought. Mm-hmm. And then I was very sick. So, yeah.
You had a different place to go in life. And, but you'd still have to talk to people, and the same skills that make a successful communication between clients and a real estate deal. In clinic and in dealing with patients who are really sick, you have to work hard to communicate with them too. So there's some definite relation there. Yeah. Some people have problems for 20, 30 years. Some families have problems through generations, and people don't understand why. And so that nagging question of why does this happen? And certain things, we're not going to live 200 years old, and there's always going to be some people on earth with cancer, but is 50% of the population going to have cancer? Is that acceptable? Or we accept that 80% of people are going to have cancer? Is that just like, shrug our shoulders? That's life. It's no big deal. People do get old, they get sick, and they stop moving around. I mean, I get it. Our bodies don't last forever, but the bell curve, that we can influence that percentage of people who are sick and dysfunctional. We can't solve every case in the world, but every case that we can solve, we better work hard to solve that. That's a motivating philosophy, let's say.
Well, I thought you brought that really clear in your book, Your Body Genius, that you wrote.
Actually, it's Your Genius Body, but that's okay. They'll find it.
Your Genius Body, Dr. Rostenberg.
You did lose your copy. I need to get you another copy of it. It's like, since you're right down the street from me, you buy one and take it on a river trip, you get one for free. So I'll hook you up.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, because it's a great book. And I had I underscored every page. I had dog-eared pages
I went crazy. I probably should have written 6 books, but I crammed it into one. And that's just, let's
go into that. What spurred you to write that and talk about the things you talked about? Because I think it ties into how sick our whole economy, we're the worst in the nation, or worst in the world in wellness, our country is. And it's not sustainable, as you know.
No.
We're spending trillions on sick care, not very much on really true wellness like what you and I work in. So let's talk about that. Tell me how you came up to write that book.
Well, I was sitting in a seminar in chiropractic college. So chiropractic college, it's like dental school or PT, DO, medical school. It's about 4,200 hours after you graduate from, your undergrad. So it's a doctorate program, but that wasn't enough time for me, right? I needed more time in school, of course. So I'd go to seminars on the weekends. And when you're in school, it kind of like wets your noodle. It dampens your enthusiasm because you're just getting hit with like all these tests and all these things you have to do, and they're stressed out. Students are stressing out over the next series of tests. But I was fortunate enough to go to seminars on the weekends, and it was in Minneapolis, where I went to school. And so you didn't have to travel. Students went for very low cost or even no cost. And you got to see what like the state of the art is. Like, what are the best people in the world doing? And probably what I'm learning in school is already 15 years old, maybe 20. I'm not saying it's useless, just hasn't filtered into an academic setting. And so I learned that's mainly what built my practice, was seeing how the best people, the best chiropractors and functional medicine doctors think. Mainly learning how to think right is the best thing to do, but getting exposed to that. And then I heard this idea of methylation and MTHFR. And so it tied something together for me, because when I had my x-rays done as a trimester 1 student in chiropractic school, you get your films, and you have like one of the professors do a radiology report with you, just so you can kind of understand. I mean, obviously, chiropractors have a lot of experience doing x-rays and looking at structure. It's not a big part per se of my practice in that specific tool, but during that x-ray analysis, something came up to my awareness I didn't know before. So the words spina bifida occulta, and there were other words like posterior ponticles, and these probably won't mean, not everything I'm going to say is going to be like your audience is going to have necessarily heard of that before, but most people have heard of spina bifida. And so they were classified on the x-ray report. And when you look it up in the general literature, they call them normal variants. Normal variants. I'm like, okay, so being a smart ass kind of person I am, I'm like, is it normal or is it a variant? And I started to think about that. And then I realized that spina bifida comes in different flavors. So it comes in what I have, which is like a little part of, the bone at L5 should have closed like this, but it's just slightly separated. There's a little space that if you stuck a needle in the right spot, you wouldn't hit bone. You'd go straight down into the, potentially into the spinal cord, or the bone's misshapen. And so on a severe case of spina bifida, like literally the spinal cord is like outside of the canal where the bones are forming, right? And so this just got me thinking, okay, well, what's the difference between someone who's born with the severe case of spina bifida? And in fact, it can cause miscarriage, it can kill children, it creates such a stress on the body that sometimes babies don't survive. That's one type of spina bifida. Then it's this whole spectrum over to what I have, which is called the normal variant, which is spina bifida occulta, which means kind of hidden. It's not really it's there, but it's very small. So the point is that got my attention. And you realize that women, for example, if you give them B9 folate, and this is where the folic acid in our food came from, it came from a good place. It came from the desire to save children, okay? And it stopped to a large degree the number of people who are being born with severe spina bifida, because our diets should have folate in them, and folate comes from foliage. That's why it's called folate. It's found in spinach and the leaves of plants and vegetables, okay? So here I am. I'm a T1 student looking at my labs. I've started going to seminars and I start hearing the word methylation, and I'm starting to connect the dots that actually it's the mom and how fast and how adequately she can methylate that determines how severe spina bifida becomes. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So you're saying if we could rewind time and give moms adequate amounts of this B vitamin, this methylation support, that baby would change the shape on an x-ray. I'm like, well, that's interesting because I'm a chiropractor. I'm thinking about architecture. Well, it turns out that's kind of what led me down the rabbit hole. Like even all these things that we see in the general population, sometimes kids are born with congenital heart disease. And what that basically means is the heart had 9 months to grow to a full-size normal heart. And when you're an infant and your mom in utero, your mom's circulation helps your heart circulate through you, so your heart has these like connections, these foramens that we call them foramens that should close. But sometimes children are born, like the baby's like 9 months old, right? But the heart's like 7. That's weird. Like, why didn't the heart grow as fast as the body? Well, it's because there's a deficiency of vitamins, specifically the methylation vitamins in the mom. She can't feed baby, and baby can't grow fast enough. Baby gets born because, there's no 10-month gestation model. There isn't a woman who could carry baby for a year. Like baby comes out when it's time. So stuff like that really, it just got me excited to realize that, that's where my interest started. And, I was excited to realize you can change so much with just nutrition. And then I was like in the prenatal area, but you can connect it to what you see in an adult standing in front of you. Hey, people in my family have tongue ties and cleft palates, and well, that's interesting that, they all still get their gallbladders removed like everybody, all the women, all the aunts, grandmothers, cousins have had gallbladder disease. That's a MTHFR problem through time that's not getting treated.
Fascinating. So basically what you're saying is kind of like crops. We don't get the right fertilizers on our crops. We don't have the right organic matter in our bodies. The organic matter is the foods we eat, the vitamins and supplements that should be in our food, and it's not a lot. We're not supplementing properly. Also, but it brings me up, you mentioned a heart defect. I watched a lady not too long ago that she was very toxic. I tried to encourage her to do colonics. She'd done a bunch of surfacey things, but then had a child who had a heart issue. And, mom's toxic, mom's not getting absorption of nutrients. And then that goes into the baby.
Mom's
She
job
had the baby.
is to feed the baby. And if mom, see, when we're toxic, we have a nutritional like pantry,
Mm-hmm.
and then we
Yes.
have exposures and demands. And the higher the toxic demand, the faster we deplete our nutritional pantry to metabolize and buffer and manage all the toxins. So that once you deplete, yeah. So kids who are born with congenital heart disease, a lot of them, many of them, the heart will grow and close and mature in the next 2 or 3 months of life. But sometimes at 2 years old, they have to have like open heart surgery to fix this. And that's all in the research. It's 100% related to the availability of the methylation vitamins, methylfolate, mainly B9, and then to a lesser extent B12, B6, B2, but really methylfolate's the key. It's related to how much of that vitamin was present in the placenta, in the placental environment during gestation. I mean, that's it. If you can fix, so that's how we help pre-pregnant, moms to be and pregnant moms. That's an important part. But methylation affects people in other ways. It also has to do with how we make neurotransmitters. So what's interesting about MTHFR, and that's again the gene that's, I don't know how they name this. God has a sense of humor, but it looks like you're abbreviating,
Yes.
a pretty bad cuss word, the mother effer gene. And maybe that, he did that so it would be easier to remember, right? So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
good. Like there's always a bigger plan here. But in grown-ups, let's say adults, young adults, so you're going to see methylation problems show up. I mentioned gallbladder issues, estrogen processing, women with heavy cycles, difficult, they have a hard time detoxing estrogen. So each cycle, their total estrogen load just creeps up over time. Every month, they're being exposed to more estrogen, total lifetime dose than they were the month before. And they have to have estrogen come in and also have it go out. And the going out part is where women, in this case, have problems. And the gallbladder's and they have to have estrogen come in and also have it go out. And the going out part is where women, in this case, have problems. And the gallbladder's the most methylation sensitive organ in the body. So when the gallbladder goes down, when the gallbladder is full of stones and sludge or it's been cut out, it's a clear indication that the pathways associated with MTHFR were not working well over a pretty significant period of time. I meet 19-year-olds who are getting consults for having their gallbladder taken out because of massive stones. I'm like, you're 19, doesn't make any sense.
No, we of course see that a lot here, and of course the connection. The other thing that we see that goes along with that is they're constipated, been constipated for a long time, and very toxic. And of course, as you know, liver is doing its best to clean up toxins and wrap some of those toxins into bile and store it in the liver. Then the liver is dripping out bile into the gallbladder, so the gallbladder can, when it needs to, squirt out as I call it, the bile, or the soap, as I call it, to help break down fats. And so you need that organ. It's not like it's an extra thing there. You want that. Otherwise, what happens? I mean, Andrew, when you take out that gallbladder, now you've got bile dripping all day long into duodenum, and now you've got another problem.
You're right. I mean, there are no spare parts. And if you have to cut your gallbladder out to save someone's life, I guess it's a better trade for a human life. But you're right about the soap part too. I mean, it's basically a detergent that helps us dissolve fats. When you're eating all these healthy fats, you're aware of seed oils now, and you're shifting to tallow and all the good stuff. Well, you still have to absorb it, and that's the gallbladder and its job. And so it's supposed to store soap like Dawn dish soap. And when you eat, it squeezes and it's supposed to squirt it out. So if you imagine pick your favorite, dish soap, put it in a bottle on the counter and smash it with your hand. I mean, you can squirt that stuff across the room. What happens when you have methylation problems is that the recipe of bile changes. And now you make molasses instead of runny soap. And so if you take the molasses jar and you tip that up and you just start a timer and you just wait, it's not coming out very easy. And it might be kind of dry and crusty in there, and it's not coming out at all. And that's ultimately the gallbladder trajectory. I started with soap. God wanted it to be runny, soap. And then as I got less healthy, it turned into freaking molasses. So then it just sits in there and it crystallizes and stones form and it concentrates and it gets unhealthy. It can be rescued, but they need people to, when you talk about like constipation and how that would affect MTHFR, right? So like the liver's basic job in the body is it acts like an oil filter to cleanse the bowel. I mean, that's its purpose. You know that, I know that. We come into contact with the outside world through the pipe that runs through us, not, walking outside and having the breeze hit us. I mean, that's a little bit of contact, but the vast majority of it's in our intestines, our colon, and all of that. So when people are constipated, the liver has to like, let's say you have MTHFR in your family. You've got a grandmother who had her gallbladder taken out. She had PMDD type symptoms. She's had heavy cycles. Your mom has the same thing. Your cousins, your aunts, your sisters. Okay, so that's an issue. There's lots of gallbladder disease, poor estrogen handling. There's been cancer in the family, estrogen-related cancer. There's been depression and heart disease. Depression, heart disease, and cancer 25 years ago were the three things that we could dial in 100% and relate back to MTHFR. And that's, we could do a talk on each one of those. But in terms of like listeners thinking, is this in my family? Well, let's just talk first. We're talking just about estrogen and gallbladder because it's definitely an easy tell. So you have this family, several generations. They don't handle their estrogen. They get poisoned by estrogen. Estrogen tears their body up and their gallbladder's getting destroyed in the process. That's an MTHFR methylation weakness in that family. They have different dietary needs than their neighbors, right? We do. We have different dietary needs. But long story short here, though, is like if you're constipated, your liver's doing these elegant chemical reactions on your toxins, on your estrogens, for example. And then it goes into the bile, into the intestines, down to the colon. But then there's bacteria in the colon that unlock that chemical reaction. The estrogen goes back to the liver. Then your body has to do it again. And at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, it does it again. It does it again at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. So you're like wasting your vitamins and your nutrition, continuously detoxing the same thing because you're constipated. That gets people in trouble.
Yeah. Everybody that I've had come in here that has had their gallbladder already removed or experiencing problem, they've had a severe constipation issue. Or maybe they had a constipation issue that they weren't aware of. Like some people think going every 2 days is okay.
They do. They think that the medical profession will not intervene in the, Journal of like Pediatric Academy of Pediatrics and everything. Like it's 7 days. It's
insane.
It's that whole, the problem, the error that they make is they're using trauma, one cause, one effect ideas for trying to keep a population of people healthy. And like, yeah, obviously at 7 days, it's a bigger problem than it was at 4 days. But like you said, it's still a problem on the second day. Why are we waiting for problems to get bigger before we do something? This is so the wrong way to do it. And so just tying this together, so we mentioned MTHFR predisposes. I mean, I've talked mostly about females. We'll talk about guys too, but women have a lot more estrogen, and estrogen is metabolized through the chemical reaction of MTHFR. We methylate our estrogens. So if you have a bottleneck genetically and you don't really have a quick ability to produce this methylated B9, this methyl group that's available, then you can't move the estrogen out of your body as fast as you're making it. So over time, your estrogen levels just build up like this. Well, ironically, and this is just, again, God has a sense of humor, women are 3 times more likely to experience constipation in the general population than men. Just across the board, women have 3 times more. It's a 3-to-1 ratio of women suffering constipation versus men. And the only thing that makes the difference is the effect of the sex hormones, the effect of estrogen. So estrogen makes all those sphincters in our intestines like flaccid and relaxed. That's why women, when they're pregnant, they get a lot of reflux. Part of it's the baby pushing on the stomach, but part of it is just all the hormones they have. Their whole body's getting looser. And those sphincters and those muscles that are supposed to open and close, they get all dysfunctional. So we love we love the women in our life. And I suppose bearing children comes with certain challenges that affect you even after whether you have been a mother or not. Obviously, you have the hardware, and that makes things act a little different. So methylation is part of that, the reason that's happening, and you see that in your practice with the constipation. Do you notice that women are more constipated than men, or what's been your observation?
Well, it's been interesting because about 90% of my clients over the years have been women, although my last several 10-day healing retreats have been mostly men all of a sudden. So the men, I don't know, maybe it's just getting caught, there's more awareness, but yeah,
We
most
like to wait for stuff to get
we do.
green, turn black, and fall off, and then we think, okay, I should do something about this.
That's
So
true. I can tough through this. I'm a man.
yeah, we
Yeah,
don't
but
have a good model for what like good healthcare looks like for guys. So
that's true. So women will be more apt to take charge earlier and often, which is great. They got a lot of things going on, obviously. But yeah, I see.
they have to stay alive to keep their children safe, and guys are like, we have this fatalistic drive. We got to keep. We have some work to do on that as men, I think. So, you know,
Yeah, we're just focused on hunting for food, right?
we have low dopamine, so we don't mind taking risks. We're like, oh, let's go ride motorcycles in the mountains. And, you know, if I break down or fall, I might spend 3 nights out here, but it sure was a fun ride. I mean, not everybody wants that experience, you know?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and so for a lot of women, it starts with maybe brain fog, and they don't know what's going on, and then they so many people that come into here. I ask a lot of questions, and invariably, so many have been given depression medicine or anxiety medication. One gal, I mean, she's just simply constipated, and she's been sick for years and years. She just come to our 10-day retreat, and um, so she's had this constipation, and they says, "Well, we want to give you some bipolar medication." She says, "I don't think that makes any sense. That's not. No, I don't want that." So they wanted to just give her the depression and anxiety stuff and the bipolar medication, and she says, "No, no, no, it makes no sense to me. I'm going to go do something else."
You know, we have 4% of the population of the earth, and we
Mm-hmm.
use 25% of the medication. And the women in the age group in this country of 40 to 60 use like a quarter of them are on mood stabilizing medications. Like we have something wrong with we have a misunderstanding. We're taking the wrong philosophy and the wrong approach, and we're paying a heavy price. And so that's again, like at 30,000 feet, the philosophy is if, and this is, a belief we share, I know that, and a lot of your listeners, but like, and this is again, the chiropractic point of view, the philosophy is that innate intelligence, God designed the body. The body doesn't make mistakes. Even somebody with stage 4 cancer, you think, man, their body just really screwed up. No, it didn't. Their body just reacted to the signals and the environment that we put it in. It did the best it could as long as it could. It never plays passive aggressive. It doesn't like get you back on Thursday afternoon for something you said on Wednesday morning. So that's one thing that I come back to all the time as a provider. That I guess what it does, it gives me confidence that I know that even complex health problems, something that might have cost somebody 50,000 or even $500,000, and it seems complex, and even Mayo Clinic doesn't know, and nobody knows. But that doesn't mean the answer is just as complex as your story or your symptoms, right? So that's something to remember. The body's like brutally efficient. And methylation at a really low level, like zooming way down at the level of genes and stuff, methylation is the process that's very simple. You're just moving a carbon atom over here and sticking it on this thing and taking it off. It's like an economy of moving carbon around. And that's very simple. But as you scale up through someone's body, we've talked about bile being produced. So if the methylation cycle is only going 60% as fast as it should, you're only making 60% of the chemical reactions you need to have the correct amount of bile or the correct kind of bile and so on. So, hey, bodies do not make mistakes. And one of the fun things about this kind of work is realizing that a lot of times these individuals, like you say, brain fog and depression, we've been asking the wrong questions as a society in the medical system. So you're really limited. How you solve the problem is dependent on how you ask the questions. If you start off by asking the wrong questions, everything you do from that point's off target. So we could talk about neurotransmitters. Should we do that?
Sure.
So bodies don't make mistakes, and depression isn't an accident. It's not a bad luck. It's not bad genes. Different genes like MTHFR predispose people to different kinds of tendencies. That's the thing about the book, like what I wanted to communicate, certainly in the beginning chapters, like collectively, we are each generation's being born a little weaker and less like whatever. We're genetic engineers. So if we make choices that are healthy, you're coding your genes with healthy signals and healthy expression of proteins and healthy, genetic expression, and you pass that on to your kids. And so you can pull out of the nosedive. But for a lot of people, they're in the nosedive when they meet us. And they're saying, why is this stuff not working? Why is my body not working? Why is my brain not working? Why are my intestines not working? So like neurotransmitter production, okay? Serotonin, for example, is needed to poop. If you are completely deficient and have like 0% serotonin, you're not just quote unquote depressed, you're severely constipated. And that's something to remember, right? Like 95% of our serotonin is made, released, and used in the intestines. Only
Yeah.
5% up here. But how do we even make it? Right? Like if we're running out of something and they say, well, you're depressed, Teresa, you're depressed. Obviously, what's wrong with you based on all of your symptoms is you have a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor deficiency. And I'm going to give you a medication that's going to help you deal with your stress and hopefully help your symptoms get better. And that's all the advice they have. So we're going to take a different approach. We're going to say, what does depression mean? Well, depression from a neurological point of view simply means your brain is slowing down. That's all it means. Brain activity is depressed. Having a depressed brain makes our body feel a way that someone would describe what depression is. Depression is, I can't focus. It's like a muscle, right? Your brain's a muscle. And instead of doing 100 burpees and going in fifth gear, you're stuck in second gear and you can barely do a few sit-ups and push-ups are hard. So the MTHFR story absolutely intersects our brain function because researchers began to notice that people with depression, this is really like big, like 30,000 foot view studies looking at lots of people over time. The presence of the MTHFR gene having two copies made it a lot more likely that that group of people would be treated for and complain about depression. And so that's an interesting fact, but doesn't mean anything to me or to your audience yet because it doesn't tell us how to fix it. Should we talk about how to fix it?
Let's talk about fixing it.
Okay. Guys love talking about how to fix things, right?
Well, I want to ask one question though. This is on my mind. What did we do to ourselves to get here? Why did all of a sudden in the last 20, 25, 30 years, this became more in the, you're talking about, a lot of people are talking about what happened. Did anything happen new, or has it always just been an issue in some people and not in others?
So I would say that MTHFR, it's a really good question. So let's touch on this for a second. So in learning about this 12 years ago, let's say 15 years ago, some of the research that I was doing and reading was talking about the prevalence of the frequency of having this gene be, in the world. So which cultures have the most copies of MTHFR? And it's not distributed like this. Okay.
So it's not an even thing. It's
no,
yeah.
No. And it's going to be really, I'm going to reveal why.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason why MTHFR is so popular and so common in Italy and Mexico are for the following reasons.
Okay.
So in Italy, about 25% of the population has one copy, which means, you've got, well, actually, let me say it differently. About 50% of the population has one copy. Yeah. About 22% of the population has two copies. That means that about a quarter of the entire country of Italy, one of the highest IQs in the world, look at their culture, history. Look at the cars they make. I have an Italian dirt bike, okay? The reliability aside, they do a really good, no, this has been reliable. It's been great. They do a great job. So the point is, this group of people, look at their culture, food, music, everything. So obviously having MTHFR hasn't negatively affected this group of people. They don't have higher rates of miscarriage or of spina bifida. They don't have higher rates of
You've been listening to my interview with Dr. Andrew Rostenberg of redmountainclinic.com. You can reach him at 208-322-7755. He also does telemedicine online. He's known for writing a book called Your Genius Body. Talks about the MTHFR gene, which we've been talking about today. Those of you not methylating will find this book very entertaining and probably be a key missing link to your detoxifying. And of course, when it comes to detoxifying, nothing better than doing colonics at Living Waters Wellness Center. We're the kings of colonics, as you would say. Been helping people detox through colon hydrotherapy since 2008, so beginning our 16th year. You can learn more about us at livingwaterscleanse.com, or if you want to take a tour, 208-378-9911, or simply book your first consultation. The first one's free, 208-378-9911. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid sized patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net, or call the office at 208-378-9911. Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, than by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. But Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Waters.
My name's Tig. I came to Living Waters about a year ago. So I'm a contractor. I run pretty hard when I'm working, but through this retreat, I think one of the biggest things that I've gained is that self-confidence and kind of the love of myself to be able to work on that and find the strength there. And in addition to straightening out the physical side of my body, the mental side has been equal, if not as great. And it's also allowed me to take time to reconnect with my spiritual side as well. Thank you, Living Waters.
Hi, my name is Anna Lewis, and I came to do the 10-day cleanse because I hadn't been feeling really well, and I wanted to trying to get my body back in shape where I could be especially healthy. Passed away of cancer a few years ago, and so I just wanted to get into something that I could cleanse, get rid of parasites and toxins in my body, and I feel like I've done that. The emotional stuff we went through, I guess I'm pretty bad at holding things in. The emotional tools that we learned about and did, those were great help. So thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link, 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out the hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab. Or call the office at 208-378-9911. That's 208-378-9911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Dr. Andrew Rostenberg of redmountainclinic.com right here in Boise, Idaho. Does telemedicine, so for all you people listening across the globe, you can call him directly at 208-322-7755. The book is called Your Genius Body, a great read. I read it while I was on a raft trip a few years ago. Highly recommend. For those of you that have been not being able to methylate, you want to learn about the MTHFR gene, which he's an expert at. And the beauty of this partnership is that we clean you out, get rid of all those toxins and all that gunk in your trunk by using colon hydrotherapy, and then go see Dr. Rostenberg, and he can finally tune you. Missing parts of the show, you can catch the podcast by going to livingwaterscleanse.com or put in your app, Whole Body Detox Show, and you'll find us 216 episodes up now. And now back to our show.
Depression or cancer, they have the average rates of those things, but they have many, many, many more copies of MTHFR. And the reason why, and the same with Mexico. Mexico is kind of a blend of the native indigenous people and the and people from Iberia, like the Spanish. They're again kind of a cousin group to the people in Italy. Mediterranean population. And the reason why these groups of people have such high rates of MTHFR, about almost half the population has one copy, is that their diet is so rich, so full of phytonutrients and compounds that contain these really key nutrients and compounds like polyphenols, but certainly the folate, the methyl groups, and choline, that it doesn't matter how many copies of MTHFR you have if you're eating this rich, phytonutrient, nutritionally dense food your whole life. Because that's the whole, it's kind of like, we can edit that out. No, I'm just kidding. We have this need for this vitamin to be delivered. And so if your diet is giving you higher levels of the food and the nutrient, the gene doesn't matter. So I use an analogy, like if you go creek boating or you're floating the river, there's boulders and stuff on the bottom of the river. And when the water levels at certain levels, those hazards can blow up your trip. They can cause you to crash and tip over. But if the water level's high enough, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's on the bottom of the creek bed. So having these genes are like roadblocks and challenges in the bottom of the creek, but water level is nutritional intake. So people in Italy, they have it more than anybody else in the world. Mexico's a close second, and they don't have higher rates of these things that we've been talking about. They don't have higher rates of them. In Finland and other countries, they have a really low rate of MTHFR because their diet in the cold, long winters didn't supply much methyl group. And then thus, over time, people who had carried this MTHFR weren't very fertile. They did not pass their genes on. So that's the way I want your audience to think about it. The places where the MTHFR is most common has a diet and a cultural relationship with food that overcomes the problem. In the countries where the rates, like I mentioned, Finland, the Norse countries, it's like 2% or 5% of people have MTHFR. What that tells me is over the last 1,500 years or 2,000 years or whatever, their diet is low in methyl groups, certainly at times of the year, because it's a very brutal climate, that if you had MTHFR problems, you're not passing your genes on as often. That's the way my mind, understands the issue. So
it's back to a nutritional value.
It's your nutritional inheritance and your cultural relationship with food that helps you overcome this. And we've bastardized our relationship with food. We've destroyed, I have research. I'm a big, huge research freak, and I have like tens of thousands of references on PowerPoint. Like, I've been building this thing for 15 years. And I'll tell you that, they did one thing that stands out to me is they did a study in 1915 or 14. They went to different parts of America and sampled the soil for a handful of nutrients. We had just started farming, so it wasn't quite virgin soil, but it was fairly new. And then 100 years later, in 2014, they go back and they've actually sampled over a century. And then they showed, like, the chart was like, it's a 90% reduction across the board: iron, calcium, magnesium, all the minerals that we need to run our chemistry just aren't in the soil because we're not very smart. We keep growing food in the soil without regenerating it because the tomato still looks like a tomato in 2025, but it's 90% less nutritionally rich than the tomato in 1915. And so, and you guys know that, everybody knows this.
You go get a strawberry that's now been even organic. They're huge, but if you taste them, they taste horrendous.
Yeah.
There's no nutrition in them.
I mean, we have convenience, man. I can go get blueberries 365 days out of the year, and sometimes they're like bloated, watery, they don't taste that, they don't have that bitter, they don't sparkle. You want your food to sparkle, whatever that, it's difficult to describe, but everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? So sometimes you get blueberries and you're just like instant facelift, and other times you eat it and you're like, oh, this tastes like wet cardboard or something. So relating back to depression though, the idea is, and I said in the beginning, and again, I don't know everything, but what I'll say is that is my motivation for my career and my practice is to help answer the question, why? Why does this happen? There will be things that are going to happen that we cannot understand. There'll be weird gene mutations that cause a beautiful young teenage girl to be in a wheelchair the rest of her life. And that part, hopefully God gives her extra grace and she can, I believe that that's how it works. But like, that's the exception. Everybody else, should be able to, we should be able to be as healthy as possible. So why do we fail with depression? The question why? And the reason we fail with depression is we don't understand what it means. It's not just sitting in a counselor's office telling you that you feel bad, you want to paint in the color blue and listen to heavy metal music, and you have no motivation. Like those are symptoms. That's not the cause. That doesn't explain why. So it's a slow brain. Okay. But it's like a curve like this. You can slow down a motor two ways. You can slow down an Italian sports car, a Lamborghini. You can slow it down two ways. You can remove the fuel from the motor in the vehicle and you will sputter and you will slow down. You can overheat the engine and drive 200 miles an hour for several hours at a time until smoke comes out of the motor, and that will also slow you down.
Right.
So this is where human beings end up. They end up in one of those two camps. People who have MTHFR genes and are slow methylators, okay? People who methylate slowly without the right diet, or maybe they eat the right diet, but as you find with people, their guts are so dysfunctional, they can't even absorb this stuff. I mean, that's a common theme in my practice, right? That's why I send people to you. I'm like, you need to get this 11 pounds of dried fecal matter and toxic waste out of your colon and colon hydrotherapy. Go see my friend David. But the moral of the story with depression is that it is impossible. It is not physically possible for the human body to produce serotonin or dopamine or adrenaline or even melatonin without methylation chemical reactions. So it's the bottleneck that's stopping these people from making neurotransmitters. So that's what I've learned in this journey is like, yeah, it's complex. Of course, most people are not going to nerd out on it like this, but you dig long enough and you find these pearls that are like, you'll never forget this. So that's where MTHFR is related in the world of depression. It's because when people cannot produce enough methyl groups or don't have enough available in their body, they cannot make neurotransmitters fast enough. Simple as this. You can take all the SSRIs and Wellbutrin that you want, but none of these medications increase the number of molecules. They're just manipulating how it moves around in your brain. And maybe for some people, that's what they need for a short time. But if you really want to go after root cause, methylation, MTHFR, that's how you increase the rate of the synthesis and the building of neurotransmitters. And we see that in clinic. I mean, it's like somebody you meet, they fall asleep all the time. They close their eyes, they're asleep in 30 seconds. They sleep through the night. They can take naps anytime. They can sleep on airplanes. They can sleep in the car. That's somebody with low dopamine, man. Simple. And then that affects thyroid because the same neurotransmitter is made from tyrosine. So dopamine is made from tyrosine, and tyrosine is also what the T part is in thyroid hormone. So you could have all these women, let's say, again, not picking on them, but they're the better customer, the more open-minded person. Their weight gain, their lack of motivation, their brain fog, their poor sleep. You can see how all that connects in there. So has
there always been that? So I hear you said, to sum up, some countries have a lot better nutrition coming into their bodies, which has mitigated any kind of problem with the MTHFR.
Sure. They can still have families with 6 kids and everybody's healthy and they have 6 kids. They haven't
noticed it. They haven't noticed it as a problem. Whereas in our country, where we're dead last in wellness, and we're getting out so much processed food and so many chemicals, glyphosate, astrazine, I mean, all these chemicals that are coming in that's upsetting the microbiome in our gut as well. So that is what's really bringing that, oh, I've got this. Now I know it more because I'm so depleted in my nutrition. Is that what you're saying?
100%. So you have a combination of a slow pathway and a combination of that plus a high demand for the product that pathway is supposed to provide. And so when we get all this toxic exposure and food has no nutrition in it, so you're not getting the delivery of the nutrient, then you're getting all the toxins. Every toxin, every single individual molecule of atrazine, or let's say lead, aluminum, some other phthalate, BPA, whatever, every molecule has to connect with the molecule of magnesium, of SAMe, of a methyl group, zinc, other things. So every time a toxin hits you through your nose, you walk through the grocery store, you go to the Bath and Body Works.
Oh yeah.
So every time that molecule goes in your nose and into your bloodstream, it's sucking out of you minerals, vitamins, and nutrients. So it's a perfect storm. Like just like you said, high exposure to toxic chemicals combined with really bad nutrition. It's like a vacuum cleaner sucking our pantry, our nutritional storehouse out. What are vitamins? They're vital amines. Vital. You will die of a disease if your vitamin levels go to zero. You'll die of scurvy without vitamin C. You've got beriberi, you've got pellagra, you've got rickets. I mean, there's lots of things. Pretty much all of the problems we see, David, are due to the combination of what you just said, of an environment that's toxic to us and a nutritional, like our nutritional storehouse, our nutritional savings account is really crappy. But in those other countries I mentioned, in Italy, they still have phthalates and they still get exposed to toxins, but their food is cleaner and it's richer. And so it doesn't, the MTHFR, the water level is high enough to go over that boulder all day long.
Great analogy. So obviously we got to supplement our diet with good nutrients, good vitamins and minerals, eat the best food we can. It's hard to do that in our country, even organic, as we've discussed. What else would you be doing?
I mean, for MTHFR, the trick with MTHFR is if this is resonating with you and you're thinking of your family, yourself, your children, it's not about panicking. I would say don't panic because that doesn't help anything. Mark Twain was really over the target when he said, it's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. And I'm thinking of the movie Forrest Gump. Mm-hmm. He was successful and honestly didn't know that much. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you think is true and it isn't. Okay. Right. So, you need to know, you can test your genetics. It's never been easier to do that. There's tons of companies. For a long time, I did it before I even considered this concept, but like, I didn't necessarily want BlackRock having my information, and now, 23andMe, like the whole board resigns. It's like, what's going on over there? So you're probably right to be a little paranoid, but there are companies that are a lot smaller that are one of the ones I've been using recently. She's actually a kinesiologist chiropractor. It's called My Happy Genes. Mm-hmm. My Happy Genes. So you can test this. You get a really elegant report. And people like me who are trained in this, we can give you a deep dive into understanding. It'll go way beyond MTHFR. It'll tell you about how well you detox dopamine and estrogen. MTHFR is included. It'll look at gut genes and stuff. But really, what else? Health is not complex. Health is not complex.
It's really not, but we've made it, the society and the advertisements has made it sound so complex, and we start chasing symptoms. I had a gal on the 10-day, 30 years old, been sick since she was 7, and they first told her, oh, you've got a bone issue. And so they gave her bone drugs. And then there was, at one time she was seeing someone who was giving her supplements. She had to just stay at home and take supplements every couple of hours, different regimes throughout the day. The things that this gal did, and what's interesting? Yes, she had toxicity. Yes, she had some colon issues. She could not work, has not been able to hold down a full-time job in her life yet, but it was the emotional component. Age 7. So what's going on at age 7? Nothing I can think of. Oh, I started having nightmares. Oh, I had the nightmares because someone tried to kidnap me when I was 5. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah. So
you're bringing emotional frequency locked into that cell has been spinning that danger all these years, causing her to be so fatigued, so tired, tons of brain fog.
100%. And this is the nature of practice. That's why they call it practice, because our job in clinic, speaking at least my own experience, is like you're trying to figure out what the lowest hole in the bucket is. And that's not always clear. Obviously, it's not clear to the patient. I'm not saying patients actually know what's wrong with them more than doctors do, but you don't have objectivity. So you're too close to it to see it for what it really is, Yeah,
that's true.
But you're right. So we think about it, like my training is to think about things like structurally and then biochemically and then like emotion. It's like an equilateral triangle, and it could be one of each or all 3 sides. But yeah, that limbic system, and then you get into like vagus nerve and the chronic stress response. It's amazing what a good night's sleep does for people, but bodies are brutal. The brain's kind of dumb. And I mean that in a nice way. The brain is only as good as the information it receives and the nutrition it receives. We put way too much credence in our brain. We should be looking more at our stress responses in people. And do they, like a girl like this, she doesn't feel safe because like you said, she's locked into that stress response. And when you don't feel safe in the subconscious brain, you're not digesting food, you shut down detox, you hold on to fat tissue. Like women, again, who are sexually assaulted or abused, a lot of them want to become very large. Not only can they beat some smaller dude up and smack them around, but they're also like, we manifest outside what our nervous system, what our belief system is on the inside. So yeah. I mean, we've touched on a lot of big topics.
What happens when we add, so many women have added, speaking of all this, the birth control pills and the IUDs and things like that. What is that doing to these genes?
Well, birth control in its traditional form is about 100x more chemically active than regular estrogen that a woman makes. And we make the same estrogen that women do. They just have a lot more of it. So estradiol, the strongest human estrogen, birth control, which is ethinyl estradiol, is 100x stronger. So when you put that in women's bodies, I mean, it changes their brain. It changes their brain on MRI, changes their behavior. When you trick when you take half of the human race and you trick them into being pregnant all the time, and you're playing with their brain, it does have consequences because a woman's lifetime risk of cancer is directly proportional to her lifetime exposure to estrogen.
Wow.
That is a clear fact. And all the pink ribbons on Estee Lauder products and mammogram buses driving around, it's not doing anything. In fact, it's making it worse. Mammography increases cancer, period, end of story. I can defend that statement, no problem. It's not a question. The question is there, there's a lot of false positives on mammography that lead women to doing things that they didn't need to do that would have been fixed if someone would have checked them for an iodine deficiency or helped them work on cleansing out the extra estrogen. Because when you have all this extra estrogen, and you mentioned some, the atrazine, for example, phthalates, BPA, all this stuff acts like estrogen. Ironically, unfortunately, like most of the toxins that we are dealing with act like estrogen. Nothing out there is jacking up our testosterone. Sorry, guys, it doesn't work that way. But that's why sperm rates are being destroyed. Testosterone levels are going down. At the same time, fertility is going through the roof. I mean, we are a species in crisis. We're like frogs. They look at frogs, they poison frogs at 1 part per billion atrazine, and they have crazy hermaphrodite frogs with two sets of testes, 2 sets of ovaries, 2 male frogs mate and have produce offspring. I'm like, this is not okay. And we need to, continue to use the gifts we have to make it go the other direction, because this is obviously not the right direction to go in. But yeah, like that, birth control is a big issue. And it also gets in the water supply. There's no municipal water supply in America that I'm aware of that actually cleans pharmaceuticals out of the water supply. So when your neighbor's on a mood stabilizing drug and your neighbor across the street is taking antipsychotics, and the teenagers down the street are in the girls on college campuses and across the country are taking birth control, well, so are the men. They're going they go down to the bar to watch other guys play a high testosterone sport on TV, and they're glugging beer that's made with tap water that has little residues of birth control in it, and it's causing our prostates to swell. I mean, it's like, come on. We can do better than this. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting on my soapbox here, but you asked.
Yeah, it's just so sad. And we've got, and now we've got infertility rates are up. My recommendation, I just had a young couple here, and my question to them, especially to young ladies, when I see how nutritionally deficient they are, they're constipated. I says, well, do you plan on having babies? And they go, yeah. Well, do you plan on having a healthy baby? Well, I hope so. I says, well, you need a detox, and you need to get your spouse to detox. Because if he's going to, like so many males are going into the C stores and grabbing a Red Bull, and they're grabbing some processed food, and that's where they're getting their meals, right? They're going to what I call the crack houses. That's the convenience stores. Now they're full of toxins, and now their sperm counts are lower. It's a real mess, and we're like Elon Musk warns, we are facing a birth dearth.
We are, and our technology has outstripped our humanity at this point. So we don't it's fixable. You mentioned the Amish, and there's other there's other groups of people who, through the choices that they've made collectively, they've retained their fertility.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to choose what kind of, I think it's just interesting how things are held in equilibrium. I mean, I can grab this phone and call someone in India, and I don't even get charged for it because it's on Wi-Fi and I'm using WhatsApp. I mean, that's cool. But the flip side is, did I really need that tool? Was my life deficient before I got it? And the fact that this technology exists is also leading to these other problems that we have to solve. So this is why like monks and really spiritually advanced people just live in a room with like a bowl, a spoon, and like, read scripture, and they keep their life simple. And they go like grow crops, and they just become like an artisan in an old world idea. And part of me just wants to run back to that world because we're spinning our wheels, but we're here for a reason, and it's a great time to be alive. And I really think we're cracking the code. My goal, David, is, I have a training program. The book's 6 years old now, and I've kind of, I don't want to say done, I haven't done everything I want to do, but we've hit our goals in practice, and we've seen so much progress with really complex patients with this concept, having this foundation of understanding how MTHFR works. We were able to like crack the code on a lot of these chronic health problems, Crohn's, colitis, autoimmune issues, cancer problems, people who are just really, really sick, neurotransmitter issues. So I would like to just get more educated doctors and providers out there. And we have a coaching program. It's called Well Power. And, that's kind of like my next phase in life is figuring out a way to make that more successful. But I mean, we have the information, like the moral of the story is this, like we have the information. There's 35 million published studies, 35 million published
We
studies.
need one more. Let's get one more.
We got to get one more. And then it's like, nobody ever read them, dude. That's the thing.
Right.
Nobody reads them. And so like at this point, yeah, if God made it, eat it. If God didn't make it, don't eat it. That was advice from, who was that guy on TV?
Jack LaLanne?
Yes, Jack LaLanne.
I always say, he is the normal we should shoot for. So those of you who are listening who are younger than, I'm 67. So if you're much younger than me, you may not know who he was, but he was the guy who developed the first fitness centers. I want to share this little story. This is a cool story about Jack LaLanne. He was a very sickly boy, and his aunt took him to this seminar to learn about health. And he didn't want to go, but he went along, and they get there, the room's full, and they're going to leave. Oh, great, I can leave, he's thinking, right? This guy on the stage, he goes, young man, you and your mother, come on down here. 2 seats right here in front. And he sat there, and he had acne, he had cysts, he was very sickly, very weak, and he listened to every word. And that guy that was doing the seminar was Mr. Bragg.
Oh, wow.
Bragg's liquid mangoes, Bragg's apple cider vinegar. Yes. And then he left, and he applied everything, and he went on and of course developed the first fitness centers. You go into a gym and you have those cable systems that pull up the weights. He developed that. He was on television in the early 50s, and when it came out, and he would do jumping jacks and show you how to do basic exercise with your chair. And the funny story, I heard him speak when he was 92 years of age at a seminar, and he was all over that stage like he was 50 years old. I mean, the energy he had. And a couple of points I took home. He says, one was, he says, well, I did this one to be my own experiment. And by the way, at age 72, he put a rope around his waist, swam across the San Francisco Bay, pulling, I think, 7 rowboats of 72 people his age across the bay at 72. And, someone says, do you take supplements? He says, yes, handfuls. And of course he lived, and he was still they still were interviewing on television when he was 94, when he passed. My point is, here's a guy that changed for a lot of people the way we think about health, and he was what I call that should be the normal we should shoot for. Is my point.
Yeah, there's like uncles and grandparents in our family who are out chopping wood into their 90s, and then they just went to bed one night and died in their sleep, and they were never sick. And Jack LaLanne, yeah, you got to look him up. It's we are aging ourselves. I'm a little younger, but he had the world record in like pull-ups and push-ups. The guy was legit. He was legitimately like one of the healthiest human beings on earth.
He told a story. He back in the days, Wonder Bread builds bodies 12 ways, right? Because it was quote fortified, and he squeezes that white bread and he says, look at this is glue, this is not good for your intestinal tract. and the producer of the show says, hey, Jack, those guys are what sponsor your show. You might want to not do that.
There's the rub, right? So
yes,
we have to get pharmaceutical advertising.
exactly.
We're a captive audience to special, like you're never going to see anything on television that takes people out of the medical matrix, because the medical matrix and the pharmaceutical complexes and the Rockefellers and other people with the R last name
Right.
have dominated this thing. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I would love to see how popular would this show be if you created like a Game of Thrones-esque level show where the protagonists were like chiropractors, functional medicine doctors, acupuncturists, craniosacral therapists. And instead of Dr. House MD or some bullshit medical show, it's like they had an alternative medical show. Like, hey, this baby has this crazy rash and is vomiting 17 times a day. And the doctor wants to put the baby on Prilosec. Oh, look, there's a hiatal hernia. We'll pull the stomach down and we'll take these foods away from mom and it all goes away, and do some cranial work. I mean, it's like, yeah. But you know, in my imagination, that's the future. And maybe we'll get there. It'd be really cool. Maybe they're going to get rid of pharmaceutical advertising. That would go a long way to leveling the playing field. Where people are like, you know, we think about the free market, we think about capitalism and stuff, but like, it's kind of a joke because it's not really free. And the playing field's tipped like this.
Yeah, the playing field's been tilted by corporations.
Yeah, it's corporate socialism,
which brings
corporate
me
communism, you know?
Which brings me to my next comment, my next question, because this is going on in our legislation this year, is they're introducing a bill because Bayer, who bought Monsanto, who went bankrupt because they were sued because glyphosate causes cancer, right? They say they bailed out Monsanto. Bayer, owned by E.G. Farben, if you go back and look at who they were back in Germany during World War II. I won't say more about that. You can go look it up. But they want to take away liability from themselves because farmers need to have this because they'll have too many weeds. It'll be too expensive to grow food. Your food costs are going to skyrocket. That's the scare tactic right now. That's what they're putting on this radio station we're on right now, KIDO. They're advertising it there. You know, farmers can't live without us because we are helping bring cheaper food to you because of what we can do. What is happening though, this glyphosate, atrazine goes right back to what you've been talking about, correct?
Well, that's it. I mean, if we can't figure out, I mean, you know, we have yields that are high quality yields, but you know who else has high yields? Russia.
Yeah, they don't have glyphosate.
They don't use this shit over there. And who else has really great high quality food are the Netherlands. The Netherlands are probably the greatest farmers on earth. That's why the tractors are called New Holland, because with the amount of land they have, nobody produces more food, bacon, beef, crops. I mean, they're the best. So we either have corporate welfare and help Monsanto make trillions of dollars, or we take that money and we make sure that farmers have a stopgap so they don't go bankrupt. But then it would take like 3 years of just regenerating the soil. And a lot of these chemicals aren't even necessary. I mean, they have lasers now. They're driving across the field. They can identify weeds and they just shoots them. I mean, you don't even need to spray anymore, man. They have freaking AI laser. Have you seen this? This big machine that runs across the field and it can just like, the little camera can identify the weed and just zaps with the laser and it just goes back around the field automatically, just following the rows, and it just blows the weeds out with freaking a laser. And it's like
with energy. Interesting. I haven't seen that yet.
No chemicals. It's just sniper.
Well, I had Nathan and Wilder Jones on of King Crown Organics, so shout out to them because they're down in Glens Ferry, and he came back in 1976 and started farming with his dad, and he just started doing organic, not knowing any better. And I guess his fields, the quality of the soil and the terrain is just amazing. Another doctor friend that you and I both know was telling me about the other day that their soil is actually a little spongy. So they've got, water, moisture is not a big issue, whereas the other soils across Idaho are a big problem because they till them all up and they're losing their vitality. The microbes do not exist.
What's going to happen is the farmers themselves are going to be so sick they can't have kids. And that's I see that like off the chart. Like all these farming families are just dead in generations. They're full of cancers. They're riddled with tumors. It's unbelievable.
Well, let's just tell you my last couple of cleanses. Okay, so where's my people coming from in the Treasure Valley? Middleton, Marsing, Caldwell, because they're getting sprayed. I just had a gal come from a 10,000 acre farm in Nebraska. And I says, oh, what do they grow? Well, they're growing wheat, they're growing corn, raising cattle. It's very sick, 19 years of age, really sick. My other group from Pennsylvania, I'm thinking like, well, these are the Amish, they should have, but no, they're using, all the farms around them are spraying chemicals too. So everyone, yes, you're right. These farmers, they're killing themselves slowly, and they just think it's a symptom, take a pill. But we've been so bamboozled over 60 years of how to farm. We didn't farm the way we're farming today years ago. And people say, well, we didn't have the yields. Well, the problem is you may have a lot of bushels per acre today, but there's no nutrition in it.
Right. No, I mean, it's like you just have to decide as a culture what you're going to prioritize. So you either provide the welfare to the corporate world and like, I don't really, I'm not trying to sound like I don't mind making a profit. I think people who start businesses are like awesome, But when the playing field is like this, the farmers have a gun to their head that say you either take the chemicals or you're putting your entire, 4 generations of deeded land in jeopardy, and they're not going to do that. So they need a guarantee. Say, here, we'll give you a 5-year guarantee. The American government will guarantee you bankruptcy protection, basic backstop, and as an exchange for that, you're going to convert each year as a more percentage of your land following these best practices. And then we'll see who's making money in the market selling it. Because in case you haven't, I mean, organic is, once Mama Bear gets involved and she's like, I'm never buying non-organic again. There's just every day, there's like more of those people. It's exploding.
Well, it's like, and you've seen this, I'm sure. I've had people come, I lived in Colombia, I lived in Brazil, I lived in Europe. I didn't have any gut problems, David. I could eat the bread, no problem. Why can't I eat the bread here?
I've been to Europe one time. It was a rad trip. And, you just have bread with water, salt, yeast, and flour, maybe like eggs. So we have a lot of work to do. It'll keep us busy.
No glyphosate in it. That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. It's actually patented in 2002 as an antibiotic. So I was lucky. I grew up eating Triscuits and Goldfish and Oreos and all the American crap because that's the house I came from. But that was in the 80s, and then you look at 1990 to 2002 is when it's from about 2000 to 2012. I think if I'm mixing my decades up here, but like we went from like 40% GMO, corn, soy, wheat to like 98%, just like that within a decade. And that's when all these like autism things are exploding. So you just look, guys, it's not complex.
One last question I want you to weigh in on, and that's folic acid that started being put in and fortifying the cereals in 1998.
Right. So folic acid was an attempt, I believe, a good attempt to lower the rates of neural tube defects in babies. And I believe that many people are alive today because that was used. Now, here's the problem. Folic acid, this is getting into some heady chemistry, but as far as I can tell, folic acid is the kind that we make in a laboratory, but it also in some ways exists in nature because we have a receptor that converts it into the active form. So if it never existed anywhere in nature, we would never have carried something that can convert it. But unfortunately, what happens is folic acid has to get converted. And in people with MTHFR, what happens is you get this giant traffic jam of everything. Like the receptor is like a parking space. When you flood somebody with MTHFR with a lot of folic acid, the active parking space is just waiting for the activated molecule to get in there, but there's this huge traffic jam of all these unactivated molecules. And so it kind of acts like a prodrug in a sense that it creates competition at limited number of parking spaces. So it slows it down in people with MTHFR. And so the companies that I work with, and so they haven't used folic acid in their products for the last 20 years. They were like the companies that I work with, they were the first companies in North America to even bring in folate. And so that trend has really swept across the industry. But I wouldn't say that So if you wanted to make someone sick and have a negative reaction, you give them like 4,000 micrograms, 2 to 4 grams of folic acid. Like if you go back on the shelf 20 years ago, prenatals had really high levels of folic acid. That would make it a problem for people with MTHFR. If you go out to eat with your family or your kids are hungry and they're eating fortified flour as a part of the snack after school, like you're not a bad parent. I wouldn't get that upset about it in small doses, but I wouldn't take supplemented, concentrated vitamins that have folic acid in there, because I do want to say human beings can convert it. Even people with MTHFR can. It's just too slow. So when you flood your body with folic acid, like there's too many molecules of folic acid relative to the activated folate, and that creates the problem. But I mean, what's more toxic than folic acid? Well, a lot of things are. So I would not worry too much about it. Just don't take it in high dose.
Awesome. Pleasure having you on the show today. How do people get a hold of you? I know you do a lot of these consults over the Zoom and phone and so forth. So, and you're here in Boise, Idaho, so local people can go right to your door. How do we reach out to you?
We have a brick and mortar, as we say, clinic here. It's Red Mountain Natural Medicine, right down the street from you in Boise. So that's a clinic. You can look us up. Our website is redmountainclinic.com. Red Mountain Clinic, just like it sounds.com. And in that website, you can very easily navigate whether you're local or distance. And I have patients in 46 states and 13 countries, 14 now. We just connected with a younger patient in Austria, because people, no matter your language or no matter your culture, we all are looking for the same thing. We want to solve problems and be healthy. And functional medicine, these concepts of MTHFR, of doing metabolic testing, they work in person, they work over a distance, because the same part of my brain and their brain that we're using to talk about the problem and to figure it out,
right.
It doesn't have to be, I mean, the laying of hands back here, that's important. But functional medicine is, a borderless kind of thing. You can take it with you. You can go over distances.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Your phone number?
Our phone number is 208-322-7755. That's 208-322-7755. And and I would say that, nobody goes bankrupt getting healthy. Doing the kind of natural medicine that we do. Now, if you're just in a state of panic and you're going to 15 doctors, traditional and otherwise, and you're doing everything they recommend because you're in a panic, you can get into financial trouble doing that. But if you have a plan, like I'm like a quarterback. I quarterback for people. I figure out where they've been, what's their story, and then they hire. Part of what reason people hire me is just to be the quarterback. Sometimes it's all in my office, and sometimes it's connecting with you and other people that you've had on your show, even here locally, that are all complimentary. And so that's I enjoy it. I love quarterback. I love people. Actually, I've come to accept that as grumpy as I may be sometimes, no, I generally love people. And I would like to see them get better, because that's how I get what I need. So you need a good functional medicine quarterback in your life, because that's an awesome partnership. So
everyone needs a quarterback. Everyone needs a little bit of coaching. Wendy and I have seen Dr. Rostenberg, and it's always great. I mean, even the knowledge we have, there's times when he can just look in there and go and ask a few questions, and it's like, I never thought of that. Never looked at it that way. So Michael Jordan had a quarterback, or not a coach, I should say, to help him with his game. Everyone needs a little help. And so highly recommend Dr.
Bill Jackson was a great coach.
He was excellent coach. We all need a little coaching. Thank you for being on the show today. For those of you listening, if you've been on the radio, this will be all the podcast notes will be over in the podcast Whole Body Detox show. And you can grab it all there as well. Until next week, have a blessed week, my friends.
Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid size patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long, long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net or call the office at 208-3789-911.
Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, and by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Waters.
My name's Tig. I came to Living Waters about a year ago. So I'm a contractor. I run pretty hard when I'm working, but through this retreat, I think one of the biggest things that I've gained is that self-confidence and kind of the love of myself to be able to work on that and find the strength there. And in addition to straightening out the physical side of my body, the mental side has been equal, if not as great. And it's also allowed me to take time to reconnect with my spiritual side as well. Thank you, Living Waters.
Hi, my name is Anna Lewis, and I came to do the 10-day cleanse because I hadn't been feeling really well, and I wanted to trying to get my body back in shape where I could be especially healthy. Passed away of cancer a few years ago, and so I just wanted to get into something that I could cleanse, get rid of parasites and toxins in my body, and I feel like I've done that. The emotional stuff we went through, I guess I'm pretty bad at holding things in. The emotional tools that we learned about and did, those were great help. So thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out the hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. That's 208-3789-911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing